Hi everyone, welcome. Today we are continuing our review of the energy balancing with faith. So if you're joining us for the first time, basically we are sorting out our energy, our spirit, to help us be more self-aware, more awake, so that we can have more power and be more productive in our lives. So we recognize that we have a lot of uh, false beliefs and programs in the subconscious levels that we let sabotage us. And now that we're recognizing it, we try to be more empowered. So yeah, we go through 1 week at a time. You can go back to the first video if you like, and just learn this skill. If everybody learns this skill, we're going to have a more peaceful, happy world. So I encourage you to do so. Okay, so we're going to get started. We're here kind of a third of the way through the course here. We're taking it slow. We're having lovely discussions every week. We went through this already, but just a quick review just to catch people up a little bit. So we talked about, who we are, really, okay, children of God, who God is to us. He's our Father and He's loving. We talked about just receiving, okay, receiving love and helping other people. And we talked about how to muscle test too. So now we're going to review how having a good sense of self-love will help you, okay? Helps our body receive more nutrients. A lot of people have nutritional deficiencies, and sometimes they buy the most expensive supplements. And that's just physical. You need to do the emotional work as well. Maybe some of you might think, oh, good luck with that. My mom or my sister or whatever, they're so stubborn. Everybody has an ability, and eventually they will have to be humbled. Somehow the universe will help them humble. They can be sick or tired of being sick, or they have some troubles. Somehow they're forced to be still, forced to listen. Okay, so that's kind of what happened to my mum lately. She fell over, broke her arm, and then she needed lots of love and tender care. And then, she's not running around doing stuff. And then, I'm able to tell her a few things. And she was really cute. She was repeating after me, saying, I'm strong. She says, I trust, the universe or whatever, so she's Buddhist. But yeah, she was just really trying to change that energy of hers. Okay, when we have a strong sense of self-love, somehow our bodies have a stronger immunity. Okay, you've got people who are sick all around you at work or whatever at home, and somehow this one particular person doesn't get anything. So that's amazing. But like the Chinese people believe that all diseases start in the heart, right? Um, and I believe that too, because it's the core of you, how you think and what you believe. Okay, so if we pause to be more self-aware, we'll be aware of exactly what it is behind the actual problem that we're complaining about, and then know the truth that we're holding on to. And maybe it wasn't a positive thing. So our body is able to eliminate toxins effectively. Your organs, and by the way, in January, I'm going to try and do the 30-day cleanse and restore if you guys want to join me. Our organs don't filter out the bad effectively. When we allow ourselves to have toxic thoughts and toxic behaviors. It's so interesting, huh? So sometimes people go, yeah, I'm going to do the lemon cleanse. I'm going to, do whatever cleanse. I'm like, that's good. I'm happy that they're trying. But unless they try to work on their emotional side and clear out emotions, they're not going to effectively cleanse. Their organs are not going to release all those toxins. Your fat cells are designed to encapsulate the toxins. So the toxins are hidden inside fat cells, right? And it will hold on to that for dear life. And there's lots of different fats in your body. They have different names. But there are some that's really stubborn because it's protecting you. Okay. It's designed to protect you unless you recognize that you're holding on to some toxic thoughts and beliefs that is not helping you. Your body won't let it go either. Or say you've got some irritation, resentment in your kidneys. You can cleanse and cleanse and cleanse. We have endocrine oil that can help cleanse the organs like that. But it won't let it go. It'll keep filtering. It'll try to do what it can to filter out the bad, but it'll hold on to some of the toxins. So, when my dad had his kidney stones, I gave him Zendocrine blend, and he was in so much pain he wasn't going anywhere. So I had a captive audience. So I sat down and I talked to him. I said, "Okay, Daddy, let's talk about some of these emotions." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I explained to him, and then he's like, "Yeah, I have that." And I say, "Well, it comes from your dad. Your dad does that to you, right? And then you're doing it to your son." And he's like, "Oh." Yeah, okay. So I said, well, how's that working out for you and your son? Anyways, he learned a big lesson. And from that point onwards, he was kinder and more loving and more understanding. But the good thing is, physically, within 48 hours, he released a big kidney stone. So 10 millimeter stone, it broke up into little itty bitty ones, and he was able to pass it without pain. And so, in the medical world, that's kind of a miracle, right? A lot of people don't realize that we could do it without surgery. But this took a lot of emotional and mental effort as well. So he had to let go. He had to let go of bitterness and pains and stuff. And a lot of us do that because we don't have a good sense of self-love. We don't love God. We don't receive his love, and we don't love ourselves. And so we need the world to behave in a certain way, change in a certain way, so that we can feel better about ourselves. And that's really difficult because we have no control over other people, right? So we just have this behavior that is just constantly going to hurt us. Okay. So we become happier, less anxious and stressed and depressed, of course, when we have this strong self-love. We don't need to attach ourselves to anybody. We remember to take better care of ourselves. We have people that say, oh, yeah, 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 I have my supplements on the table. I forgot. Yeah, I should do that. Oh, yeah. When we love ourselves, our brain will just remind us, okay? We'll have better self-talk. Okay, we'll talk better about other people too, I think. We see solutions to problems. I love that my students, I have kindergarten and grade 1 students in my class. Whenever they present with to me a problem, I tell them, well, find a solution. That's it. And they run off with it. Miss, my market doesn't work anymore. I said, go find the solution. I don't say, go and do this and this and this. They know. We've showed them how to fix problems, and they can come up with problems. And they're like, may I this, may I that? And that's perfect. Okay. Even with my children, it's just like, what did you do about it? What can you do about it? Then we live our life with a full potential. We have great potential, and sometimes we don't realize it, and we just go about our days. Okay. We answer only to God. And so when people come along and they say things and do things to us, we don't need to please them. We don't need to answer to them. We don't need to explain ourselves to them. We don't owe them any explanation. Okay, so that's what healthy sense of self-love will do for you. And I notice in my kids, I have one of my daughters here today, is that they take more risk. So in a class, for example, if the teacher calls on them, calls on the class, they will be one of the first ones to volunteer. So, because they have a strong sense of self-love, they're not as insecure, so they take risk. And if they make a boo-boo, big deal. Okay. So we want to do that as parents as well. Okay. So we attract more power and abundance, better friends. That also means you're going to lose friends that are toxic, which is okay. And we have more money, time, and resources. It's just interesting. Sometimes I don't mean to do a lot of things. Like I put some things on Etsy, for example. Like I don't mean to like make a huge amount of money. I just thought, oh, let's see, I'll try this out and see what it does. And then one thing leads to another, and another person says, hey, can you make this other thing too and available, and then it just kind of builds by itself, because that's how we attract things, right? Because when we have this strong energy, and then someone recently said, hey, can you make this in Spanish? And I thought, oh yeah, okay. So anyways, we just are given. We are given, so we don't have to come up with all the solutions. The solutions are around us. We just need to take advantage of it. And once you take advantage of it, you get more of it. So all of these benefits for self-love. I had a lady, she was like telling me, well, isn't that selfish? And I said, no, because it's like filling up your cup and then you have something in your cup to pour out to other people. Okay, so that is actually healthy. And if all your children learn to be self-loving, then, it's not draining to anyone. Okay, you will have such a beautiful home and everyone is responsible for themselves, and they have extra to love on other people. Okay, so that's so important. So if you don't have a strong self-love, you will not love yourself. So imagine, this is what I tell people when I do sessions. Imagine if somebody is with you all the time and you can't get away from them, but that one person that's with you all the time is so critical, and she's always pointing out what's wrong with you, and she's never praising, and she complains a lot, okay, about everything. She's not happy. Would you want to get away from that person? You would. And would you like that person very much? No, you wouldn't. And that's what happens when you follow yourself around and you do that to yourself. Okay, in your subconscious, you don't love yourself very much. And because of that, we project that on the world, and the world, doesn't show a lot of love and care. Okay, and then we wonder why. But we're the one that needs to make the change first. So we do create a lot of drama and we blame things in our lives, okay, instead of taking responsibility, because we don't see that we have at the core of us this pushback. Okay, we have codependency and draining relationships and self-sabotage and lack of endurance and commitment to ourselves and to each other. These people, they are not reliable. If you promise yourself you're going to exercise a day, you better do it. If you're not reliable to yourself, you're not reliable to other people. And then you create people that are not reliable around you. Or you see? Or you don't attract people who are reliable. And then you see the world so darkly. Okay. It's not that case. Yeah, you can create your beautiful universe. And within your sphere, you have beautiful people. Okay. Fear of rejection. This is very big. We hold ourselves back a lot, and we keep broadcasting "reject me." So when you have opportunities, for promotions, opportunities for growth, opportunities for anything, you let it pass by you. When I learned about this, I made sure I tell myself I win everything, and I love everyone, and whether they love me back, it's okay, because I love myself sufficiently. But because of that, I've received more love, and I see the world as very loving and beautiful. Okay. I've seen students who, other teachers yell at them, and kids are kids. They don't know. They're still learning, right? And yeah, even recently, I had another student from another class come into my class. The teacher needed help, so she was bleeding up her class. And then she was just sat there and just cried and cried and cried, like, tantrum cry. So I came over after that teacher left, and I just talked to her, and I gave her two options, and the tears stopped, and it doesn't have to be yelling and stop that. And Just showed her some love. Yeah. And that's it. So, sometimes the solution is so simple. It's right before you, but you have to have that cup full yourself first. You can't feel drained and then, try to dish out some love, because your love will be hollow. Okay. So often you fear disappointing people and letting people down, and then you end up doing just that. And that's what the lack of self-love does. You've got negative self-talk, self-sabotage, you've got depression, and then even suicide. You reject yourself so much, okay? Because, that person that's with you, which is yourself, is whinging and complaining and critical and all that, okay? So where there is an opportunity to praise, take the praise and not, the criticism, okay? Because people see the natural results anyways, and it's sufficient learning, and they will make the changes in their sweet time. We actually manifest all of this in gut problems and other inflammatory health issues, okay? And we're self-critical, intolerant of ourselves and others, and we think poorly about other people, and caring too much about what other people think, because we don't have that confidence from the love of God and the love of self. We're critical of others, and we're judgmental. Just be careful, because you can judge. You can judge righteously. You can judge people with, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And then therefore you will feel that people will give you the benefit of the doubt as well. Okay. So, this is a person who's never chosen to be happy. And when people never choose to be happy, guys, you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about changing them. They will always find something wrong. Yeah. So, quit being responsible for them, okay? Because nothing you do will ever help them. If you're like this one person, criticize me, I'm too spendy, if I spend something, or if I choose to, save and not do something, then I'm too cheap. It's like they're never happy, right? So their opinions don't count. It really doesn't count. And so you become very immune to that. Right? For those people who have boundary issues, clove, on guard oil, and tea tree oil will be your good friends. Okay, put them on the bottom of your feet. Okay, put them on often. Use Litsea, lemon myrtle to clarify what you want, though. Okay, but with these other oils, you'll have a healthier boundary. Healthier boundary is not about saying no to people, it's about saying yes to yourself. All right. So the world has their own version of this, and it kind of looks the same, but it's very different. And they call it self-esteem. Okay. So I want to clarify this, because I realize that it can be anything good, anything of God can be mimicked by Satan, and it can be taken as good, but it can start to destroy us slowly. Okay. Self-esteem actually is a comparison thing. We're comparing ourselves to something. We're either above something or below something. It's a little bit of an insecurity, bit of competition there, needing for constant validation, needing for importance attached to something, like something that you can do, not who you truly are. If you're attached to who you truly are as a child of God, that never changes, you see? And so it's a constant. And even if you mess up, even if you're a jerk sometimes, you still, can love yourself, right? But here, when you mess up, now you're, a loser. Now you're no good, now something, right? It leads people to be controlling, because they want to maintain that high self-esteem, demanding attention, draining of others, excessive focus on self, and denying the power of God. Okay, because it's all you. It's all you're doing. Lucky you, that you can manage to achieve certain things, but there's going to be times that we can't achieve certain things. even if we try with all our might. Okay, there is a limit to our humanity, whether we like to admit it or not. Okay, we are humans. Some days we forget stuff, some days we mess up. Okay, and then our self-esteem goes up and down, right? And that's just tiresome. Okay, all right, so we don't need to do that. Okay, um, when I tell people to have self-love, they're like, no, why? Because I've not achieved anything, and I'm not pretty, I'm not this, I'm not that. That's still comparing, isn't it? Pretty compared to what? What is your definition, right? Or skinny enough. If I'm skinny, then I'm happy and healthy. But can a slightly not skinny person be happy also in that time? I mean, after I gave birth to my children, everything was in the wrong place, right? And should I not be happy at that point? You see what I mean? That's silly. Okay, that is just attached to anything in the world, any standard. Okay, so that is just a sense, it's kind of an insecurity. You're not anchored and stable in things. So with the healthy self-love that I'm talking about, it's a security in God's love. No matter what I do, I'll do my best, right? I'm going to keep striving, but no matter what I do, God still loves me. And then you can always have that connection. You feel connected to humans. It's not this competition where it separates you from other humans. All right. So I've seen people who insult and criticize others, and I'm like, what is the point? Sometimes in the staff room, sometimes I hear people criticize, and I'm like, dude, what is the point of all this criticism? Does that make you feel better? Does that make you more elevated? Right? Why? Right? And it disconnects, it separates us. So, like, if you had an opportunity to find similarities and commonalities, do that instead of finding differences. Yeah. I had an experience where my twins, they were in kindergarten or preschool, I can't remember, but anyways, they were talking about their friend Jewel, and they just Jewel this, Jewel this. They love this girl so much, and I'm going to bring this to school to give to Jewel, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then one day, one of the twins were like, you know, Jewel's skin color is really different to us. I said, how so? And they said, it's darker. And I said, oh, okay. But they hadn't noticed any of that all year long. They hadn't noticed it. And that's good. That's a good thing. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I want to see. Lots of commonalities. Once in a while, you can see some differences. You've got curly hair. I've got long hair. I've got, whatever. That's fine. But it doesn't make anybody better or worse than each other. Okay. You're confident. This self-love is the source of your confidence, not your accomplishments. Okay. So if you mess up and you didn't do well in your exam, if you didn't do well in your review at work or whatever, you got some negative feedback, it's okay. You can still feel confident that you can keep trying again. You're unattached to people and things. I've seen lots of mothers, their only identity and attach and only identity and purpose in life is their children. And when their children grow up, great, they lose themselves. um, or they become so controlling of their children because if their kids mess up, then it's a reflection of them. Okay, so the kids don't feel free to do anything, and try anything and take any risk because somehow, you're going to bring sorrow and grief to your mother, right? It's not freeing to be human, right? Um, you're more flexible.
Adds
Yes, please, Michaela.
adds into the whole unattachment thing. So it's not that um you don't even listen to anything that people say. It's that no matter what people say, it doesn't affect how you intrinsically feel about yourself, because your sense of self-worth is something that is solid. It's something that is not going to go away. It is unaffected. So you can still like listen to someone and be like, oh yeah, I think you did good, and be like, yes, thank you, and feel good about it. But it doesn't intrinsically change the way you feel about yourself. So regardless of what people say, if even if they're like, hey, I think that you're like you totally missed the point and you're just like you're not fit for this or whatever, it doesn't matter because you know you and you can take feedback, but it's not going to affect your sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much,
So
Michaela.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that feedback. We, I was not always this way. I had to learn all of this growing up. I was just, into my culture, my Vietnamese culture, and, did what people did. But I questioned a lot of things, and I questioned, like, could we possibly not ever feel offended and hurt? Could we possibly, um, be confident regardless? When I asked those questions, I found answers, and that we can, and that's what the gospel of Jesus Christ teaches us, right? That, that's what we can strive for, right? Of course, in this life, you're not going to get it right the first time. You will feel hurt, you will feel offended, but then as the years go by, the more you practice this, the easier it gets. And I love it. I really love it because people feel free to be themselves around you, right? As a school teacher, I write reports, and, my supervisors, they read through my reports, make sure, we check each other, we edit each other, and they give me feedback, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, can we do this? And I'm like, you know what? I want to tell you something. This is not my baby. Just change it as much as you can, because we want the parents and the child to understand what we're trying to convey here. So it's about them, not about me. So just feel free. And it's so liberating for those people who, have, the higher positions above you, to just freely give you feedback, right? Um, I one year the teacher says, well, you're just too gentle, too kind, and like, oh, I'm sure she's going to, improve. But she says, you have no evidence that she's going to improve. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I'm just being hopeful. That's just me and my hope. And she says, well, you just say it this way, right? And then I'm like, oh, good feedback, right? And it's not like, oh, I made a mistake and now, I'm a bad teacher. It's just like, thanks, great. I didn't see it that way, right? Love it. And please give me more, right? Um, you feel at peace no matter what's happening in the world, and understanding of your self-worth and importance. And we'll talk about the 6 fundamental human needs later. But yeah, you understand your self-worth. So this self-love will lead to this self-worth soon, and we'll explain it. Okay, hope that makes sense. Okay, so feel free to jump in, guys. Okay, worthiness and self-worth. Yeah, it is different. Okay, so self-worth is fixed, no conditions. You are a beloved child of God with great potential. You are of great worth to Heavenly Father, parents, because you belong to them, and inestimable worth in the eyes of God. Kind of like a seed, the seed has great worth. The seed can grow up to be a mighty tree, right? A child has great worth. A child can become the next president, the next whatever, amazing genius, great worth. Okay. So that is what it is. Okay. But worthiness is a different matter. Okay. Even though they have that same word in there, this is, it changes according to your obedience. So say that, you know, we have something in our church called the temple. We have a church and then we have a temple, and temple is for people who feel worthy. They've repented and they've done their very best, and then they have a little interview, but it's really a self-reflection interview. Somebody asks a question and then they answer, but it's your answer for yourself, because people won't check. And yeah, so have you been obedient? Have you, been able to be kind and loving, not lie, steal, and all that stuff? And if you answer yes, then you're worthy to come into this temple, and people dress in white, and then we pray together, and we receive more instructions, and it's so beautiful, because you feel happy, you feel united. Because if somebody is like not feeling worthy, you can feel their energy, and it kind of, influences it, makes that situation, that group, uh, not so feel so great. Okay, so that's why we check. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like if you um, do a test to become like a lawyer or a doctor, but you got somebody else to do it for you, right? You got someone else to do it for you, and then you get the credit for it. So you can cheat and lie in all of that, but when you get in there, you're not able to perform. So you're only cheating yourself. So that's kind of what worthiness is about. So deep down inside, did you work to create a better person and become something? It's about becoming. It's not about checking all the boxes. Okay. So this is not necessarily about earning or deserving. Um, to do, everyone deserves to be loved, to just have potential, right? It's not about flawlessness either. Okay. It's you striving. That's pretty much what it is, that what I understand it as. Okay. Allowing God to be the judge of your worthiness. So what people do is they judge themselves. They say, I'm not worthy because I'm not perfect. I'm not worthy because I sometimes do this bad thing. Um, well, let God, judge that. For example, a mom, she doesn't feel like a good enough mom because she is tired, and she knows she doesn't do everything all 110%. She forgets something, and then her child falls over or whatever, and she gets hurt or whatever, and she could have been there, should have been there, whatever. Then she feels this worthlessness, right? Um, I would ask these mums to talk to God and say, can you tell me, um, whether I'm worthy? Because let God judge. Because sometimes people will judge themselves too harshly, and then they refuse this love. They refuse to be happy. They punish themselves by setting up all these conditional situations where they can't ever be happy. You see what I mean? So, like, your self-worth is, you're a great person. You can strive harder to be a better mother. Yeah, you messed up. That's okay. But you're striving. Okay. And if God says, you're a good mother, keep going. You are of great worth. You can do so much more for your children and for the world. Keep going. Okay. That way you can have this security, this stability, and continue to strive. If you mess up on a test at school and now you're done, you know what I mean? We can't do that. We can't do that to ourselves. We need to say, look, I'm an intelligent person. I didn't do well in this test. I'm going to try again. Okay, that's the application of this. So quickly do we send ourselves into the corner and, put ourselves in timeout, right? Beat ourselves up when we are, you know, not perfect at something. Okay. All right. So I hope that makes sense. It's just about our obedience. You're striving to do what is best. Because sometimes we strive, but we even fall short. But that's okay. It's just you're 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 working hard on it, and you're not cheating yourself. Okay.
And Jade, do you find that like with the criticism that comes from, mum and mum's mum and previous generations, do you find that it's more challenging for someone to feel, worthy
Yes. Yes.
in those
Yeah.
circumstances?
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I have to break all of that tradition, because all
Yeah.
of all of that is conditional love. All of it. If you're not beautiful, if you're not eating properly, if you're not behaving properly, earning properly, something according to their measure, because they haven't chosen to be happy,
Mm.
they judge you, and you're not worthy, you're not worthy, you're not worthy. And then therefore I'm not going to be happy with you. And so you can see how that's conditional love. So suddenly, even with my mum when she was feeding our children, um, when they were little, it's just a Vietnamese saying, and I don't think she hears herself. She's like, "Come on, open up, eat, and then Grandma love you." I said, "Mom, if she doesn't eat food, are you not gonna love her? If you're gonna have her
Mm,
breakfast, are you not gonna love her?" She's like, "Oh, it's not that, it's not that," and she doesn't know what she's saying. It's just a Vietnamese saying of trying to encourage kids, just say, "Eat food, so that you can grow tall." And be healthy. You can say that. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, ha ha ha." She's laughing. But I'm like, hear the words you're saying, Mom. Words are powerful. But because of that, they beat themselves up and then they get sick and then they all of these things. So,
mm,
my mom's recent sickness, I'm like, I'm giving her an opportunity to learn and hear these things because she doesn't see it. Yeah, that's it. And suddenly she's not worthy anymore. Yeah. Michaela, go ahead.
So I love being on this topic because oh goodness, give me a second. What was I gonna say? Yeah, because people's criteria always changes, and then you have different people who have
Yep.
different criteria.
Yep.
And so if you're constantly um basing stuff off of this criteria, you might be meeting one person's, but you might not be meeting another's.
Mhm.
And you're constantly going to be disappointed in yourself.
Mhm.
And especially when it's something that's more generational, it's something that you grew up with, something that you got so used to the nuances
Mhm.
and the little habits that you don't recognize them as anything different. Just like
yeah.
from a psychology's perspective, if you've been around something for so long, it's extremely difficult for you to recognize that it recognize something that is off.
Yeah.
And so, and again, in that instance, it's really easy to beat yourself up. Like, how did I not notice that I was doing this or thinking this way? But it's just natural to not initially recognize these things. So
Yeah.
it takes time, but it is possible for you to recognize, like, hey, why am I doing this? Why do I say this saying all this time? Is it really helping, or is it like um reflecting an underlying like issue that we need to address?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and they get controlling too when they have their own standards and ideas, and then you're not doing it, and because you've done it in the past, they want to control that, and then someone else has another opinion, and so you're trying to please the world. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so it's just this lack of self-awareness. Um, but yeah, if you train yourself and then later on when you train your kids, it's going to be a whole world of difference. If you are unsafe to talk to somebody about something that you've done or that you've messed up, then there's conditional love there. There's this false sense of worthiness there. Okay. So if you're like, "Oh no, I'm not going to ever tell my parents that," no way. Then, they make it really unsafe. Yeah. So like this little one here, she's not very little anymore. She's 22. Um, but yeah, whenever she messes up, she tells me, and I'm like, "Man, you messed up." And she's like feeling bad about it. And I'm like, "Feel bad for the next 5 minutes because it's a natural consequence of stuff. If you don't study, you don't do well in class, and you didn't do well in your exams, yeah, you should feel bad. And then 5 minutes later, did you get over it yet? It's not like la 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 lecture lecture lecture. It's like, what can you do better? How can you fix it? What's the solution now? It's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I might make suggestions like, yeah, no, don't worry about this and this, and just worry about that and that. So now you have more time there. Okay. But it's not like, there's this constant insult or criticism where you like feel so unsafe to tell these people stuff, right? And that's I think the clue. If somebody is unsafe to talk to you, or if you're feeling unsafe to talk to somebody, there's so much conditional love there. All right, conditional happiness. And if they've chosen never to be happy, you can't talk to them about stuff because
mm,
everything you say will be picked on. Yeah. Even if you think you made a great choice, they will find something wrong with it. And so I'm not going to talk to them about stuff. But first of all, Resolve it within yourself though, because if you made a decision and you like the decision and you can back up the decision with your reasoning, and if they have their opinions, you're like, well, that's fine. We can agree to disagree, right? And as you become unattached to them, they feel like they've got no power over you, and they become more respectful, and they have to change their tactics. Yeah. And I can
Very
speak from experience, my parents are like that. And with my sister for the longest time, they can, and they don't even know they're manipulating, but it's like, well, I'm very mad that you did this, and my sister's like beats herself up and all these things. And, for me, I'm like, oh, you didn't ask me. Yeah. You didn't ask my permission. I can't do that. And so now they're all a lot more respectful. If I make a decision, they will assume that I thought it through. Yeah. So not telling you off or whatever. It's so great. But my dad, he already started that path of changing. My mum, she's very reactive. Lucky she's a kind and caring, loving person. But yeah, my dad sees the wrong things in our culture, and he started that journey of realizing and clearing all that stuff out. And then when it came to me, I found more stuff, and I would present it to him, and he would be like, "Oh, yes, you are right. Let's not do that anymore."
so
So
you're teaching them through this process as
right,
well. They just
yeah,
don't know
right.
it.
As it comes, and you've got to hold on to a vision where your family will change, where your family will be beautiful. um yeah, our family, we have very open and honest discussions, and because we're not doing it to change the other person so that we're happy, it's easier to talk. I see our girls, like I've mentioned before, when they were driving to school in America and then they drive home, sometimes they stay out there for another whole hour, and I'm like, what are they doing, right? And they're just doing a session on each other, or they talk about something and then something is brought up, and by the way, I feel this way. And you teach language. I feel
Hmm.
this way when this happens.
And they're
Well,
just literally sitting in the car, in the driveway, parked at home, and
yep.
just talking.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And just give them their space, because they know how to solve it. They just need to let it out. And sometimes you don't feel it and don't know it until it kind of comes to the surface, until a few things trigger it, and then you recognize it. And so all of them help each other refine, our, spiky bits, and our round off our pointy edges and stuff. And it's really good. We really need that. So there's a difference between feedback and criticism, because you already feel loved. You already feel this self-worth. That's established. It's not going to change.
I remember whenever I talked to, so I'm the oldest, and so most of the time I talk to the sister right under me. And sometimes she pauses in the middle of our like little energy bouncing or just emotional, we're just emotional party session. And she'd just be
I
like,
love that.
I feel like I am kind of mean right now. And I'm like, it's not mean. You're being blunt. But because I already have an understanding that you love me and that this is not coming from a place of criticism or believing that I cannot ever succeed, it's coming from a place of, I need you to understand this because I have full faith that you can change, that you can do better, that you can learn this lesson. And so she might say something like, hey, you need to get over yourself. Like you need to like wake up and realize that this is not like the whole world. Like this is nothing compared to like whatever she says. And it can be honestly
She's saying the
like,
problem's not as big as you think it is.
yeah. And like no matter what she says, I take it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand it. And she's like, I can never talk like this with anyone else because it might not be seen as nice or whatever, because you have to have a foundation of one person has to know that they have worth and that they are loved regardless. And they
Mm.
have to understand that the other person is also coming from a place of love.
Mhm.
So when both people are comfortable and both people are mature and they have that level of emotional intelligence and maturity and humility, then you can get through things so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with my sister, we're the same. We do this energy balancing with each other. Sometimes, we talk about, "Oh, I'm frustrated with this, or I feel really angry about this other thing." And then I would ask her things like, "So do you have a false belief about this and this and this about yourself?" Instead of going, "Oh, how rude, you're pointing this out, you're criticizing me of something." She's like, "You know what? That makes sense." Because this love is already established. There's no conditional love here at all. So once that is established forever and ever and ever, right, because you have this great sense of self-love, and then you've decided to be unconditionally loving to everybody, people feel safe to talk to you. I mean, like I
Mm.
came to this new school, and there's people that have been there for over 10 years, and then this lady's like, "You know what? You know more about me than a lot of the other ladies that have been here with me for 10 years." I don't know why. I wanted to share with you all that stuff. And I'm like, "That's fine. I'm really privileged to hear that. And I do understand where you're coming from." And she's like, that's it. She feels like I do understand, but I'm safe. I'm not going to be like cuddling you and saying, "Oh, you're fine. You did perfect." If you mess up, I'll tell you you've messed up, but it's not like now you're a bad person forever and you're not worthy at all. You know, it's you have great worth. And even though you messed up there, you still have great worth. The end. All right.
Yeah, it
Um,
would be a disservice not to be honest to them
yeah,
because
that's right.
you're only telling them, for them to, be better,
Yeah.
change. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can see how they can be happier. Right. Yeah. So you're doing what you feel inspired to do. I don't tell people everything, because it's not my place. If God
Mm.
didn't say, "Hey, go in and help that person," I'm like, "No, yeah, they'll figure it out. God's got this." Right. I'm confident. So I had many, many sessions, they've done this for a decade, many sessions of with people where they insist they could not let go of that self-criticism. And I had to tell them, what that's not healthy. You can self-correct. That's good. I mean, if you messed up, you self-correct. Note to self, can't do that again. Don't do this again. Um, but it doesn't mean you go all the way to all this criticism and abuse, and you get to the point where that is self-abuse. So some people think that no, that's humility. I'm humble. I'll tell you what I really, really am, this lowly person. But I'm like, no, I don't think that's humility. When you're thinking about yourself all the time. So, for example, you have a discussion with a lady, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, that would be me. Ha ha. Oh, yeah, that's me too. Like I'm the worst. Ha ha ha. You know, who is she talking about? Poorly. She's talking about herself, and she keeps on thinking about herself. As the conversation is all focused on her, you see? And so that is self-focus, and that is pride. Even if, you're it's like a pride of I am humble and I'm down and I'm lowly, you know, and therefore I'm better. You see? Sometimes people feel like they need to be humble like that. And then it gets to the point where I'm like, no, that's not humility. That is actually self-abuse, and that's actually prideful. Like, oh, I don't need to spend all that money to do all those things. Barely making ends meet. Ha ha ha. Here, as and they talk like that, and I'm like, you're not creating. You're not allowing God in to make abundance happen. You know, and they hold on and they think that's a good thing, but you are miserable. How is that a good thing? God wants you to be happy. You see what I mean? So when I explain it, people start to get out of that. Okay. So a real humility is somebody who is abased, who is depending on God. Not that we're passive, but I want to create this amazingness with God. But I know that in and of myself, I can't do anything. But I know that with God next to me, He will tell me what the next best step is, and I will be amazing because God's with me. That is real humility. God will train me and teach me and guide me, right? And accepting weaknesses and strengths. Like the Michaela is saying about her sisters, it's like, yeah, oh yeah, I see that I do that, right? How can I fix this? And then we give each other suggestions, right? And this is how I do it, and this is how I do it. Maybe you can try this. That's fine. You're open-hearted, you're teachable, and you're receiving with gratitude. Like, thanks, guys. Thanks for taking care of me, right? Our kids, they've had lots of budgeting programs over the years. They have a notebook or they have a spreadsheet or whatever. Over the years they kind of had feedback, and my husband and I too. We buy all these apps or whatever to keep track and to save and to set goals or whatever, and it's refined. And they keep asking for a better way of doing something. It's kind of the same like with our finances. It's so great. We can't just say, here it is, and I did it right the first time. Forevermore, I'm going to do it exactly this way, right? Have courage and solution seeking. Yeah. Self-respect, self-aware, are conscious of your own weakness and strengths. And it's great because we do have strengths. So we say, you know what, you're really good at this. Can you please help with this other thing? I'm better at this than you are, right? You must admit, right? With this, let me try and do that. Okay. So we work together collaboratively. That's humility, right? To recognize your strength as well. Yeah. So, healthy boundaries, like I said, it's about saying yes to you and not just about saying no to people or things, creating your own policies. Okay, that's proactive. Act in faith. When I feel this way, I'm just going to do it. I don't understand everything, but I'm going to do it. That's humility. Some people, oh no, I'm fearful, I'm worried, I'm worried. That's not humility, right? I've had so many people come to me and say, hey, I feel so inspired to do doTERRA. God told me last night, and I was like praying, and I felt this way. And I'm like, great, let's do something about it. And they're like, meh, when, when this happens, when that happens, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, when you're ready, imagine facing God later on in your life. Okay. When our opportunity comes to stand at the judgment bar. And God's like, hey, you know what? I gave you so many opportunities to be better, to have more abundance, and da, 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 da. You didn't take it, you know. And what sadness when we say, "Oh, I was too chicken," or "Yes, God, I heard you though, but one moment, let me make an excuse." Right? That's what I feel sometimes. I'm like, no, no, I better act in faith because I don't want to make excuses. And to have true righteousness, it's not self-righteousness, but true righteousness. I'm really trying to be good, non-judgmental or correct judgment. Okay. Judgmental is just a conclusive negative, um, uh, like labeling of somebody. Like that person's never going to succeed, or that person's going to, fail forever or something. That's judgmental. Um, Empowered and confident. So sometimes people don't think that empowered and confident is a reflection of humility. It's just not, like doesn't go together in their minds. But it is, like Moses parted the Red Sea, empowered and confident that the Red Sea will part. There's people who move mountains, who have a problem and they fix it. You're just confident in the Lord's confidence. I'm not saying be confident in your confidence sometimes, because we're humans. Yeah. So those are the signs. I'm breaking it down to help us define it, to help us become it. Yeah. A base is a very good word, I feel. And that's why each day we need to be prayerful. Each day we need to invite the Lord in with everything that we do. Please be with me. Please help me out with this. I want to achieve this. If it's thy will, let me do this. Let me make this happen? Okay. Any comments or questions?
I love that. Based.
Yeah. So we can look it up in the scriptures. There's so many scriptures with that word. Excuse me. Okay. So the self-abuse and pride. When I recognize that this is prideful, I stop doing this. Okay. It's a false humility. Wallowing in your weakness and being unempowered. Just saying, I can't. Oh, this is recognizing your weakness and striving to change it, or, you know, leveraging somebody else to help out with that. That's fine. If I need somebody to edit my books, I'm not a great editor. I recognize that. I find a solution for it, right? But it's not like, oh, I'm not a great writer. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. Like, I'm the worst. And you keep on telling yourself all these negative things over and over again. Don't do anything about any of it. Being so unempowered, that's actually prideful. It's focusing on yourself, thinking that you're better because now you're humble, right? Um, Self-sabotage and excessive self-focus, negative self-talk, putting self down, this self-righteousness. Oh, mummy, I got a mummy body, or da 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 da. Just live, just live, right? Be happy.
Sometimes self-sabotage comes a lot. Well, it's all kept. Self-sabotage has a lot to do with victim mentality, and sometimes victim mentality, when you give other things or people responsibility for things that happen to you or your own choices,
Mm.
um, is addictive because it doesn't hurt as much if it's not you making the problem, uh,
Mhm.
or it's not up to you. And so a lot of the self-sabotage is really you continue to be addicted to that. And so you'll sabotage yourself and just be like, oh, this happens. And it's just because I'm not good at remembering and I'm a victim to my brain or whatever. Or, oh, this happened because this person just didn't listen to me. Like I'm a victim to them when it's really like you could have been more responsible. You could have confirmed. You could have whatever. Doesn't
There's no
matter.
accountability.
Non-accountability is very addictive, and it takes a while to get over it. But it's also like not trusting in your power, not honoring that you are a person who has power. And so the more that you honor that identity of yourself as someone who has power, someone who can do things, the easier it'll be to break free from those tempting self-sabotage um, habits.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kayla. That's exactly right. The reality is, we are both of these. We try to be more on the real humility side, but sometimes there's a lot of culture, and we don't recognize that we do this. So when we have words that describe it, it helps us kind of help uh, to self-correct and help each other. So in our family, Rebecca, welcome. This is my daughter, Michaela. She's joining
Hi.
us.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice
We're
to meet you
finishing up
too.
this call to, anyways, with this last slide. Um, but, when we have these words, we can actually communicate better. You can say, hey, oh, that sounds like false humility there. And you're like, oh, you got me. That's right. It is, isn't it? Yeah. So we help each other out there. Okay. So where are we up to? Putting self down, right? This is self-righteousness, and over servicing and giver. Who do you know that does that? Lots of several people that in your life, right? Over servicing. Why do you think people over service?
For me, because that is something that I do struggle with. Like one of my love languages is acts of service, but I go too deep into that. And it's a martyr thing for me, where I see myself as like I'm doing a good thing, but I'm also a victim to this or that. I'm a victim to time. I'm a victim to um, money or health or whatever it is, because I'm giving something up. But in reality, it's not true service, not true love if you're using it as an excuse to you victimize yourself, using it as an excuse to make yourself look better. It's like
Mm.
I worked so hard on shoveling my neighbor's lawn and now I don't feel well and I need like rest. Whatever it is, that's like a really poor example. I'm sorry. But it's it's also stems from like you not having enough love for yourself. And when you don't have enough love for yourself, you won't respect your own boundaries and you won't respect your own needs and you sabotage and um, you kind of blame the other person in a way. So it's not real love towards them either. And so it's just a kind of toxic circle.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so when you label yourself as I'm the giver, I'm a giver. Yeah. Yeah, but we could be a receiver as well because if you're a giver, um, you don't give other people an opportunity to be the giver, you know? So like parents will complain that their kids are selfish, but who made them that way, right? So as a mum, if it's my birthday, if it's yeah, a holiday, Christmas, whatever, receive. Let your children love on you and give you because when they become parents, you want them to receive equally as they give, right? Sometimes we overservice because we want it to be obvious that we are humble, obvious that we are loving, obviously we are a good person, right? Why do we need to prove it? If you're a good person, you're a good person. You don't have to prove it to people. If you're busy today, you know, that's fine. You can't help somebody, that's fine, right? But if you've labeled yourself, you always want to burn the candle on both ends. Oh, well, that's a bad example that you're setting for your family. Okay. And if you're a leader, bad example for everybody that you've got influence over. Okay. Yeah. So the martyr victim mentality, we don't recognize it. Um, but we need to open our eyes to do so. For example, I asked this mom, I've mentioned this a few times and it finally clicked in her brain. I said, do you ever go to bed early, go to bed late and, wake up earlier than all the family? Yes. Do you tell the kids, you eat first, I eat last? Or, you go first, I'm last. And everyone is first, everyone's taken care of first, and you're last. Yes, all the time. I said, that is being a martyr. When kids want to go somewhere where you're like, once my kids wanted to go rock climbing. And I'm like, oh, is it going to be fun for mummy? You know, you don't say, oh, I'm just going to put up with it and just do whatever the kids want. No. Can you consider mummy as well and what mummy would like to do?
And
Mm.
it's also teaching people to how to respect you. Like if you put yourself
Mm.
last, then you're teaching others to put yourself last.
Mhm.
If you are someone who's like has some boundaries, you teach other people to respect your boundaries.
Mhm.
And it's not being selfish at all. It's allowing the other people to um, be more outward thinking as well.
Yeah,
It's providing them opportunities to solve problems on their own, whether it be like, oh, you know what, this is actually not a big deal. I can do it on my own. Or even if it's just like, hey, I can make a compromise, I can do this or whatever, and helps us be better, more united in a better community.
absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Jade. It's true what you're saying, like trying to prove yourself. Even in the context, I started a new job this week, and even though it's week two, I felt like this pressure to prove myself, and try and help as much as I can to give, give, give. But there's only so much you can do 2 weeks in. So I
Yeah.
don't know where that comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. So the solution for us, and I get where you're coming from. Of course, when you first start, you want to have a good impression, is to check in with God and say, am I doing enough? You know, am I do I need to improve somewhere or whatever? Do I need to do more? Just questions like that. And once you satisfy this with the Lord, relationship with the Lord, so we can do it with parenting. Am I doing enough for my children? You know, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's yes. Okay. Most of the time it's yes, because moms, you know, tend to overdo things, right? But then sometimes I step back, right, and I say, am I doing enough? And no, no, why don't you do this with this other child? And it's like, oh yeah, gotcha. I can do that. Even at work, because what you're trying to do in the subconscious is to prove to somebody that you're good enough, but you need to come across as I am good enough already. And then people don't need to demand more from you, because even if you do 110%, but you believe that you don't do enough, people will believe that you don't do enough. They won't see all the things that you do. And so you are going to go 120, 130, you know, 200%, and people still will feel like you're not doing enough. So I had to establish to myself that, hey, I am doing plenty and extra, and people ought to be grateful. And when I have that energy, you can see even the parents and the principal and people are like, oh, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything you do. And honestly, I feel like, well, it's not that hard, right? But because I've already established this identity about myself, um, it feels great because I can take time out. I see people doing so much, and I'm like, that's excessive, right?
Mm.
I don't have to, and I don't want
Mm.
to, right? People bring in food and treats and all that, just take care of everybody. And I'm like, that's good for you, but I'm not that kind of person. And I do plenty. I tell myself that, you know, my students prove that they're good because the scores are high. Great. That's sufficient. That's my definition of a good job, right? At work. And that's it. So I think you've got to find that definition for yourself, check in with God, and then come across as this person. Then they'll wow, but it's not for your elevation, right? It's
Mhm.
just their opinion. That's great. But yeah, we're not relying on them to give us that feedback. Yeah, but they will. They'll give
Mhm.
it to us. Yeah, so that's a good thing that we discussed. Yeah. So yeah, we're not victims to their opinions.
Yeah.
Yep. So this undefined boundaries um is that exactly what we're talking about here. Like, where do you draw the line of I am a really good employee? How do you know? Right. So, you know,
Mhm.
I would define it as my students, you know, follow the curriculum. I'm teaching the curriculum. I'm testing, I'm assessing. A lot of my students are above the grade level, right? I come to work on time. I leave on time. Well, I leave a little bit after. I come a little bit earlier just to prep and everything, do my part, help the school wherever I can, if I can. But if not, I give myself full permission to not do that. I give myself full permission not to go over 110%, you know. I don't need to, because then it's you do look like you're a try hard, right? And then
Yeah.
people do look down on that too. So you gotta find that balance. But the balance comes from within you. Yeah.
Mm.
Here's my definition, right? And then I just define it and define it and define it. And then I look at it and I go, this is me. This is how I'm going to perform. Because you do have a life. I've mentioned to my supervisors, I'm like, I do have parents that I need to take care of. I do have kids I need to take care of, right? And then in my mind, I didn't have to explain to everybody that I do have a life outside of my work. But people
Mm.
do respect that. They're like, oh, you know, I can take it from here. You can go home now. They do that a lot to me. And I'm like, okay, sure. Thanks. Yeah. And you know, when you go home, you don't have to be working or anything. It's just I'm home. Huh. Yeah, they let me off. Um, holding self back from greatness. That
Mm.
is not humility. Because if you can serve and bless the world and you hold yourself back, that is like a sin of omission, right? If you
Mm.
could just imagine like Celine Dion or, or Michael Jackson, and they never performed, and then never, we wouldn't have this amazingness, right? Like they
Yeah.
robbed the world of this amazingness. Yeah, how sad, right?
Yeah.
So should not hold yourself back from greatness, and greatness does not equal to pride. Yeah, like, oh, so prideful, that person. No, we're great because the Lord has given us these gifts and talents. Amazing. Yeah. So this self-judgment, self-punishment is a form of pride, because you know what? We think we know best, and therefore we execute judgment. So give God back his job, right? God's job is to judge us at the end of our days. And I tell people, are you dead yet? Like, no, you're not facing the Lord, the judgment bar. I don't know what it looks like. But you're not there yet. You still have opportunities to try and try and try again. So why did you conclusively think that now I suck, I'm the worst? Um, that's you thinking you know best. How do you know you're the worst and that you suck, right? Just keep going. So even with my children, whenever we, hear anybody like, oh, I can't do this and this and that, you know, how do you know? Did you check in with God and ask him? Yeah, oh, I'm the worst mama. And then, okay, can we just check in, right? And if he says, no, no, you're fine, keep going, then you keep going. You don't have to limit yourself and make yourself into this victim by labeling yourself and then not striving. And that causes a lack of confidence, lack of faith, and lack of trust. Okay, and all that is pride. You're doing it all on your own. You're drawing from your own energy, and you're the one that feels drained. That's the sign, that feeling of, being drained. But if you are working and working, working, you're just so energized, you keep on going. Where did all that energy come from? Because you're connected to the Lord. And some days you're not doing very much and you're drained anyways. Yep, that's because you're pulling on your own energy, your own power, thinking
Mm.
you know best. Yeah. So when I recognize that, I'm like, oh, yep, let's pause and refocus and, invite the Lord in. Yeah. So in reality, we fluctuate from one side to the other, and hopefully we learn and we move and become more humble for real. And this selflessness, before we end, I just want to help you define it. Um, is thinking less about yourself. Okay. It's not thinking less of yourself. The pride side is thinking less of yourself. Okay, can you see the difference? One is less
Mm.
about and then less of. Okay, so I'm good. I've established myself with God. I'm good. Let me do this. This is this. Let me be amazing at this thing. Let me be great at that other thing. Okay, because you're thinking less about yourself. You want to serve the world. You want to make a difference. Okay, less of yourself. I'm the worst and the worst and the worst. Yeah. So there you go. Anyone else want to add to this and share?
I think it's all about, just making sure to constantly check in with yourself because you can go in like a downward spiral.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it just takes that love in God and love in yourself, and knowing to discern the difference because, as Michaela said, it can be quite addictive to yeah, not take accountability and fall in that victim mindset. So it's just knowing to check in and change that, and develop those habits.
Yeah, very true, Celine. What we can do when we feel like we're falling into it, we can say, oh, am I feeling this emotion? And then you muscle test where it's from. It could be through 5 generations from mum's side or dad's side. And then you tell yourself the equal and opposite, more positive thing. And then you ask if you can release it, and then you're able to release it. Yeah. And then once you do that, now you've established this new positive self-supporting belief, you repeat that often, and we come out of this habit, you know, of that victim mentality and this need for validation because we're so humble. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's what we try to do here in this energy balancing course. All right, guys. I'm going to stop the recording and we can talk off the record. Thank you for watching.